What is going on, guys? Brad Johnson. We're here to talk about the Planet Eclipse CS2. So as I sit here in this moment of time, the Planet Eclipse CS2 is easily the hottest paintball gun on the planet, and I have finally gotten one to do a proper review. The CS2 is kind of what it sounds like, right? The second version of Planet Eclipse's like newer high-end spool valve guns, or really we should say like high-end spool valve guns without like the air transfer tube or without hose. The CS1 being the first in that line of like high-end spool valve guns without hose coming from Planet Eclipse. When the CS1 launched though, there was a lot of like mixed reactions between the thing. Like it was a good gun, right? Like it was reliable and shot well and all these things, but it was much larger than people were used to. The length was pretty long and that trigger frame was really large and kind of like fat and chunky and took a lot of your hand up. So with the CS2, they set out to like make it feel a little bit better. Maybe not like better, just make it a little bit more appealing to like most users. They also wanted to add some features from other Planet Eclipse guns like the ETHA2, and they've also added some brand new features that we've never seen before. So your CS2 finally came! You open the box, and what do you get? You don't necessarily get this in the box, but this is the case that the CS2 comes with. The aluminum famous Planet Eclipse case. CS2 manual, you might need that. Spares kit, excellent spares kit all the Planet Eclipse guns come with. Grease, Dow 33 in there, you need that to keep the thing working. The hard face bolt, and there's a soft face bolt in the gun right now, so you do get two different bolts. Hex keys or Allen wrench key set, barrel cover, excellent Planet Eclipse barrel covers, FL barrel kit. This is they're 14.5 inches, 6.89 back and 6.81 cert, CS2. So like I said, people complained a lot about the way the CS1 felt. It was just big and kind of clunky feeling. And with the CS2, they fixed that by doing two things. They changed the actual diameter or the size of the grip frame by changing the grips, and they've also changed the angle of the trigger frame. So by changing out those grips and going to a new slimmer style grip, the trigger frame feels much, much smaller. It should be noted that the aluminum parts under the trigger frame on the CS1 and CS2 are very similar. The only real difference in making that trigger frame smaller in diameter or like not as chunky is changing the grips. So along with making the grips a lot smaller, they also come off without tools now. Not that that's that big a deal. There's really like nothing underneath the grips. The only really reason you'd ever take them off is just to clean stuff. So you just undo both of those latches and then pull the grips right off. They do have these little tabs on the top though that kind of slide underneath the body to help lock the grips in place. I broke one of the tabs off. Literally the first time I took the grips off. I was not very, we'll say, how do you put this, delicate though. I was kind of just like ripping them off. So those tabs can break, but me breaking mine, hey, it's all my fault. So you actually can put, with a little bit of modification, these CS2 grips on your CS1 if you want that CS1 feel. So they've changed the grips, but they've also changed that angle on the trigger frame. So with the CS1, to make the gun feel a little bit longer, something Planet Eclipse wanted to do, they actually made the angle on the back of the trigger frame a little less vertical than it had been on Planet Eclipse guns before. So it made that gun just feel a little bit longer. And with the CS2, they've gone back to that more vertical angle on the trigger frame, while the length from the top of the foregrip to the top of the trigger frame isn't all that much different. The difference between the bottom of the foregrip and the back of the trigger frame or the back of the ASA has changed quite a bit. Pushes your tank in a little bit further and then gives the gun that shorter feel. Something else they've done with the trigger frame is move your hand closer into the body or closer into the bolt. Having your hand closer to the moving mass inside the bolt can help reduce the kick. It's also said that getting your hand closer up into the barrel or into the body makes aiming a little bit easier. One issue that some CS1 owners have had with the trigger frame is actually the trigger frame bending. People were putting so much torque by diving or falling or whatever on that trigger frame, you could actually bend the front of the frame, the foregrip in. They fixed that a little bit with later versions of the CS1 and the CS 1.5, but people were still doing it. So with the CS2, the trigger frame actually hooks into the body, making it a very, very strong on the front of this thing. Like you're playing paintball wise, like you're not gonna bend this thing. You'd have to like, I don't know, set up some sort of rig to be able to bend the frame now. Another issue people were having with the CS1 was the foregrip. So the CS1 and the CS2 both take AA batteries. They go in the foregrip and they're stacked like this. And with the CS1, sometimes people would like go up to shoot really fast, the batteries would come disajarred or ajarred. Disajarred? Ajarred. And then the whole gun would shoot off and you couldn't shoot anymore and had to like restart the gun and stuff. It was quite annoying. So with the CS2, they've just changed the way the batteries are held in place. So now they slide in and there's a bottom lock that goes onto the bottom of the foregrip. That's gonna be much similar to the Ether 2. I did notice though, how comparing the Ether 2 battery lock area to the CS2 is way, way easier to take the bottom off. I just think they've used a lighter spring in the bottom of it. It's definitely a better and cleaner design than the CS1 though. The CS2 is also gonna be coming with Planet Eclipse's new GP core, or a Gamma Core Pro, Gamma Pro, there's been a lot of names with it, but on Planet Eclipse's actual literature, they're calling it the GP core. So they're going away from the IV core that we found in the CS1 or CS1.5 CSR, stuff like that, and going with a version of the Gamma Core, the same bolt system that's actually found in the Ether 2 and G-Mix. Planet Eclipse really like this Gamma Core system. They like it because it's reliable, it's super low maintenance, low pressure, it doesn't kick really at all. It's just a great overall system. And the version that's in the CS2, the GP core, is really no different. It's operating at only 105 PSI, and Planet Eclipse say it's the gentlest gun they've ever made. So it's gonna handle that fragile paint better than anything Planet Eclipse have ever made. So since the CS2 does have a different bolt system than the CS1, it is shooting a little bit different. So I always thought that the Planet Eclipse guns, like say the Geo 3.5, shot quite a bit different than the other high-end spool valve guns. It had more of a thumpy, more solid shot, and then when the CS1 came out, it wasn't as solid feeling anymore. It kind of felt like a mix between the Geo 3.5 and the Lux. So it was a little bit thumpy still, but a lot more airy and soft feeling, the CS1. And the CS2, I think, has gone back a little bit more to that 3.5 shot, so it's not as smooth and as airy feeling as a Lux or a Vanquish. It's much more solid shooting like previous Geos. That's my spiel on how it shoots. I think that computes well. If not, leave a comment below and I'll try to answer it. So back to the trigger frame. The CS2 has two boards. They have a primary board and a secondary board. This is where some of the cues from the Ether 2 pop in to the CS2. So the Ether 2 has a primary board, or really only one board, that sits on top of the trigger frame. And the CS2 also has that, right? They have a primary and that secondary board. The main board, or the primary board, is the one that sits on top of the trigger frame. And it's the interesting one. So the secondary board's got the LCD and buttons and stuff, but that primary board has a lot of more interesting things going on. They've taken the eyes from the Ether 2 and put them in to the CS2. So before the Ether 2 and CS2, all the Planet Eclipse guns had wired eyes. So you have to wire the eyes from the body, then down through the trigger frame, and then into the board. So now the eyes are affixed to the board. You can see as soon as you take the eye covers off, there's a little white dot right there. Those are the eyes right there. They don't, however, look directly into the body. They hit what Planet Eclipse are calling light pipes that are actually on the eye covers. So those light pipes take the infrared beam and then direct it into the breech of the gun to help detect if there's a paintball in there. I really like this idea. I was a big fan of it on the Ether 2, and I really like that they've incorporated it on the CS2. It makes taking apart stuff, cleaning stuff a lot easier. You're less likely to break eye wires or pinch eye wires or break actual eyes off. It's just much cleaner, and I really like the new board and the light pipe system. CS2 is also coming with Planet Eclipse's new rake trigger. A trigger that's gonna be very similar to the ones that are coming on a lot of the dye paintball guns. Trigger is really easy to take out. You just remove one screw from the side and trigger just plops right out. The whole concept behind the rake trigger is you can actually adjust the angle of the trigger face. It's really simple. You just back out a screw on the trigger, adjust the trigger how you would like, set the screw, and then you have an adjusted angle on your trigger. There's all the other adjustments though, right? You got forward travel and post travel and all those other normal trigger adjustments. You can just now adjust the angle of your trigger. I'm kind of on and off about the trigger. I really like how it's considerably lighter than any trigger Planet Eclipse has put on a gun before, but I'm not a big fan of this rake trigger. I much prefer the scythe trigger or a deuce trigger that have a little bit of action to it, and it's not just a blade like the CS2 trigger is. I also really don't like the sharp edges the trigger has. So my theory with triggers is that if you have an edge of a trigger that's just a 90-degree angle, and you hit it from the side when you're shooting, you really can't shoot fast. That's why I like these triggers that have I don't know, a curve on the edge. I feel like I can shoot them way faster. I mean, it's not that big a deal. It's kind of more of a personal thing, but I much prefer the rounded or scythe style triggers. So this is gonna be the section of this video where I just kind of spitball and conclusion it up. One of the things that I really kind of don't like or like kind of understand, I guess, when people compare the Ether 2 to the CS2, right? So they both share a same bolt. They share that gamma core, different versions though. So to me, you kind of think about like maybe saying the Ether 2 and like the CS2 are the same gun, so why buy a CS2 is a little bit like comparing, we'll say a McLaren 720S, super awesome fancy car, comparing it to a Ford Fiesta. They're both cars, and they both have internal combustion engines, so they're the same thing, right? Not really. The CS2 and that McLaren are considerably more premium, right? They might do the same thing. The cars both drive, the paintball guns both shoot, but they get there a little bit differently. So I'm gonna make no bones about this, right? The CS2 is the best paintball gun ever made. And I think the best paintball gun before that was the Geo 3.5. I wasn't really a big fan of the CS1, mainly because of everyone else's complaints, right? The thing was just big and I didn't really like how big it was. But because of the reduced size of the CS2, it's the best paintball gun ever. But like kinda, right? Like that's what I think. A lot of these paintball guns are gonna shoot very, very similar. Doesn't really matter. You could have like a MacDef Prime, a Diem-3S, or a Vanquish. They're all gonna be relatively similar, right? They all don't kick that much. They're all quiet, easy on paint, fairly air efficient, and then for the most part reliable. But I think the CS2 is better at all those things. I think it's more reliable, more air efficient, quieter, kicks less. I think I said more reliable. Warranty's better. Everything. It's just a better gun all around than everything else. This is the best paintball gun ever made. If you have like, $1,500 or whatever to spend on a paintball gun, just don't buy anything else. Like buy a CS2. It's the best paintball gun ever made. CS2 review. People are gonna hate on me a lot for this video and say like I'm a Planet Eclipse fanboy. I don't know, it's the best paintball gun, so why couldn't I? Why shouldn't I be a fan? You know what I'm saying?